Gary Spiers, a trained fighting machine. His brutal style of fighting, along with his speed, his skill, his toughness, gave him a fearsome reputation as a street fighter. A reputation, I've been told, to match legendary street fighter Lenny McLean. And I've been told that Lenny McLean and Gary Spiers actually worked alongside each other on debt collecting jobs. He was an expert in violence, but violence was his last resort. Being a doorman for over 20 years in Merseyside and being an international bodyguard, he was involved in a lot of violence. Born in New Zealand and proud of his Maori blood, from the age of 7 he was fascinated by fighting and would ask his mum to take him to the boxing gym, but instead he took up wrestling and judo.
I went to school in a school of 1,000 pupils with only 9 Polynesians there. They brought all their political and racial bias with them when they immigrated from Europe after the war, and we had a fight pretty consistently, probably 3 times a week.
So what styles did you study to?
Oh, I've studied about 9 different styles.
Yeah. Initially?
Wrestling.
Yeah?
Wrestling, yeah. New Zealand being a rugby and swimming country, wrestling is a very popular thing there when I was a young person. And after wrestling, judo. After judo, Jiu Jitsu, or with judo, Jiu Jitsu. And when I went to Australia, I started karate.
So as a young boy, he had a constant desire to learn how to fight. He travelled to Australia, where he learned chokes, locks, strikes, and all aspects of fighting. He would eventually adapt all of these styles of martial arts he learned into his own style, a close range style for close combat, which is more beneficial for the type of job he was doing with the door work and the bodyguarding work.
In my working life, I've worked in about 119 different cities on the planet, and I have always been employed in the physical security business in one part of my working life. I've either been employed in the daytime in a day job per se, but my first mining job was a Jewish gem broker and mine owner in Australia. I was only 21 years of age. But we were armed at the time. Myself and my colleague were both armed, and we used to protect him.
Door work started for Gary in 1964 in Australia, and it was here that he picked up an 8-inch scar across his face, the knife cutting through his nostril, his lips and his lower jaw. And the attacker was thrown down, his spine was smashed, and he had 13 damaged vertebrae. And even 9 months later, he was still in a wheelchair.
Put him on the ground, he wound up there, and I had used my boots to finish him off. His colleague would not have been a threat to me in any shape or form, but I climbed onto him, and it altered my whole life. I was a legal fugitive in Asia and Europe for 12 years as a result. Now that's one reason why I don't go on the ground. I put them there. Right.
Another fight that happened in Australia was when 2 military men off duty tried to come in the club drunk. Gary refused their entry. They went off, came back in uniform with their boots on, came up to Gary, who was sitting at a table, punched him. He's then grabbed hold of one and fell on top of one. As he's on top of the man on the floor, the other man's kicked him in the head numerous times with a big boot. So Gary, to stop the fight, has bitten the ear off of the man on the floor, jumped up, and the other man ended up flying out of a 2nd floor window. And Gary later said, when questioned, he couldn't recall how the man flew out the window. As a doorman, Gary would often get a lot of threats, phone calls, threats of people coming with knives or guns. Gary's motto was, if you're going to come for me with a tool, you're going to get maximum damage in return. Gary would say to him, you'd better like the sight of a lot of blood, because whatever you try and cut me with is going to end up sticking in, out or up you.
You understand me? Fellas John size are normally tooled up. As a matter of fact, I've seen fellas John size, seen them bring the most ginormous gear out of their coat pockets, you understand me? By which time I usually grab me mate and say, yeah, I'm off to the piss house. You understand? Right now, start to steam it up a bit. Go, it's beautiful. You understand me? There you got him. He's a nice bloke. I'm trying to teach him to be a real nasty bastard. You understand me? But you got him. You follow? And he's going to prevent that. And this is the only place you'll get the chance to practice. It's beautiful.
So Gary's been involved in hundreds of fights over the years in his line of work, and he's been attacked by gangs with weapons, and usually the gang would end up with cuts, bruises, broken bones, even on one occasion an eye hanging out when he was ambushed by a gang that attacked him with weapons. But like he always says, he doesn't start the fights, they start on him. And like he always said, it was all self-defense. If you're going to come for him with weapons, then he's going to inflict maximum damage. So going back to 1968, Gary left Australia, headed to Japan, because he wanted to learn from the best, and headed over there. He received his 3rd degree black belt, which he would eventually get the 4th degree black belt. So in 1971, Gary and his very good friend Terry O'Neill headed back to the UK, where Gary would now do the doors for 20 years in Merseyside and across the country. Gary had to deal with some of the infamous hard men in Liverpool. Gary also did bodyguarding for the Michael Jackson concert in 1988. Once actually took on 9 men and beat all 9 men after they harassed a girl, and the girl ran in the club to get away. The 9 men came in and Gary had a battle with the 9 men and beat all 9. There's so many stories about Gary. He's such a legendary fighter. I'll put some links in the description to some websites where you can read loads more about Gary from the people that were closest to him and that knew him well. And the realistic self-defense that Gary taught, I know a friend of mine in Milton Keynes, Tony Davis, teaches the same type of fighting, which is it's anything you're not allowed to use in martial arts. So it's all the forbidden, banned moves like eye gouging, biting, groin shots, throat strikes. So it's all them devastating blows that finish a fight off straight away. And people like Gary, when they're proficient at it and they use it in everyday situations and they become experts at it, they're very, very dangerous men to beat, especially with Gary's size, speed and strength. So I know how dangerous those techniques are, and I can see why he was regarded as, they called him the deadliest street fighter alive. I mean, Gary was once asked why 2 of his fingernails were so long, and he replied, "Have you ever felt what it's like to have a fingernail stuck in your eyeball?" Sadly, Gary passed away in 2001 at the age of 57 with a heart attack. But he'll always be remembered as a legendary fighter, respected and loved by everyone that knew him. I just wanted to say a thank you to Peter Lewis, Dennis Martin, Patrick Gower and Terry O'Neill. And like I said, I'm going to put links in the description for anyone that wants much more information about Gary, because there's only so much I could put in a video, but there's so much more that you can read about him, and it's such a very interesting life. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to all my subscribers, new and old. I really appreciate all your likes, comments and shares. It means the world. The channel really going forward now, and I'm so motivated and so encouraged by all the positive comments, and just by all of you watching. It really means a lot and really helps the channel. So yeah, I look forward to the next video, which will be in a couple of days, and thank you again. I'll see you all soon.